I was paid a visit by an anonymous alcoholic. I had been drinking heavily for a long time. A few years probably. I know that I was, and I still am, an alcoholic. But back then, I just consider myself to be having a good time or blowing off some steam, so to speak. In my mind, my firing from 3 jobs in 10 months was just sheer bad luck. Only that and nothing more. I mean, it just wasn't the right fit, I would tell my friends. And now looking back, I realize that I was, and I still am, a massive fucking idiot. The start of my long and winding descent into extreme alcoholism was a typical Friday night. I had just gotten back from work, and having picked up a bottle of Kentucky bourbon on the drive home, I was looking forward to drink myself into oblivion. I climbed the stairs of my 5th floor, woke up, huffing and puffing by the time I got to the top. I would always mutter under my lack of breath how these staircases are killing me. Like it wasn't the half-liter of liquor I was drowning every night that was making my body break down. Wheezing, I entered into the apartment, locked the door behind me, and I immediately took a long pull from the liter of whiskey I had been loving cradling in my arms, as if it was a newborn. The familiar burn instantly put me at ease, and I began my weekly ritual of blocking all calls, searching for anything mildly interesting on TV, and drinking hard liquor. Halfway through the handle, I was starting to get the sweats and opened the living room window to let the cool air and the sounds of the street below waft up into my apartment. I wanted to sit out on the fire escape for a while to cool off, but I remember being too drunk to even crawl my way out of the window. I resigned to laying on the floor beneath the window like a sick dog. I lay on the floor for who knows how long, sweating and listening to the sounds of the city outside my window. Cars honking, the bar crowd shouting, and a feral cat yowling somewhere off in the distance. At some point, I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning on the couch, feeling like an absolutely refried dog shit. As much as I hated hangovers, at this point I share a comfortable familiarity with them. At this time of my life, a hangover meant a night well lived, a success of sorts. I slowly rose to my feet, greeting the sun that flooded my apartment with a scowl and a hand over my eyes. I apologized to the crucifix mounted on the wall, and then I started my morning routine. I trudged over to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, looked at myself in the mirror, frowned at the paper-white, sleep-deprived shell of a man that looked back at me, popped a few Advil, and then shuffled slowly back over to the living room, where I plopped myself back into the couch like the sorry sack of shit I was, only instead of turning the TV back or checking my phone for missed calls from the night before, I was transfixed by what I saw on my coffee table. A brand new, unopened bottle of Kentucky bourbon. My alcohol-soaked brain ran on its pathetic little hamster wheel, trying to think where this precious gift had come from. Did I not drink my bourbon last night? No! Obviously you did, idiot! You're hungover as hell right now, I thought. Had I bought 2 bottles last night? I found the receipt in my pocket, and I confirmed I had indeed only bought the 1 bottle. Where the hell did this second bottle come from? I gave it about a second and a half more thought before I decided not to look a gift horse in the mouth, and cracked the bottle open. Hey, no better way to get rid of a hangover than a little hair of the dog. I took a shot, I gagged, and took another shot and corked the bottle. As much as I wanted to keep the party going, I had things to do. I put the bottle on the coffee table, closed the living room window, and headed out into the city. I was on a mission to find a life-sized Shrek cutout for my niece's birthday party the next weekend. That has literally nothing to do with this story, but I was bummed I didn't find one. I came home late. I came home that night late, around midnight, already with a few beers deep from hitting a bar with friends where I lamented my unsuccessful Shrek hunt. Feeling good, I tossed some leftovers into the microwave, flipped on the TV and grabbed the mystery whiskey, and I took a long pull. After eating, it wasn't long until I was passed out on the couch, still cradling the mystery gift in both arms. The next morning was the same. I woke up, I acknowledged the pounding in my head, I cursed the morning sun, I apologized to the bleeding Jesus on my wall, I pissed, I scowled at my pale white reflection in the mirror, I popped some pills, but the walk back to the couch added a new wrinkle. My ankle fucking hurt. It didn't hurt to put weight on it, but I noticed there was some blood on my sock. I plopped myself back down on the couch. I peeled off the bloody sock and I noticed a single round puncture wound on my left ankle. It was a big thing. It was big. It was about the circumference of a number 2 pencil, and from the tenderness, it seemed pretty deep. The bleeding had stopped, so it wasn't too serious, but just before I could theorize on the wound's origins, I saw it. There, sitting on the coffee table, was a brand new unopened bottle of Kentucky bourbon. Now, I was terrified. I was terrified. I know I didn't buy that whiskey, or did I? What do I remember from last night? What do I remember from Friday night? Thursday? My friend had spent so many nights on autopilot, guiding my glassy-eyed body around the city, and I had never really thought about it until then. How much time was I missing from my life? I drink alone so often I had no idea what I did when I blacked out. Yes, I drank alone so often I had no idea what I did when I blacked out. I could have easily run down the street and picked up out of a bottle. It wouldn't be the first time. I mean, there was one day when I woke up and there was a half-eaten wedding cake in my fridge. No idea where that came from, but there was something sinister about this whiskey. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it didn't sit right with me. That is, until I pulled the cork and smelled it. Once it hit my lips, all the fear melted away. It wasn't anything to be afraid of. It was nothing more than an unexpected visit from an old friend. Besides, 3 bottles of whiskey in one weekend was something I didn't normally have the budget for, and I wasn't going to complain about free booze, so I kept drinking. At least that night I made it to my bed. The next morning, I called in sick for work as soon as I woke up, which was already about 3 hours after the start of my shift. I was hungover as shit, but something was different. I felt weak. My ankle still hurt like hell, and I must have scratched it or bumped it in the night, as the foot of my sheets were soaked in dark red blood. The outer rim of the stains already starting to turn brown with age. I limped into the bathroom and gasped at my reflection. I was even paler than the previous mornings, almost translucent. The skin under my eyes was dark and baggy. It felt like a monumental task to lift my arm to my mouth to swallow a handful of Advil. I didn't bother to wash or bandage my bloody ankle, and I dragged myself back out into the living room to rest on the couch. I couldn't even think about washing my ruined bed sheets right now because on the coffee table sat a brand new, unopened bottle of whiskey. Damn it. I stared at it. I thought. I pulled it closer. And then I started drinking it. You know, you never look a gift horse in the mouth. That night, I was drunk. Really, really, really drunk. More drunk than I had been in a while. I started early and I had almost polished off the entire bottle, but there was still a little left, about 3 fingers worth. It was already getting late, and even in my drunken state, I knew I wasn't going to make it to work the next morning. Then, I had a horrifically stupid idea. I snapped a selfie. I shot the picture over to my boss in a text message, and I said something on the lines of, "Look how bad I look. I'm so sick. I need the week off. I think I have leukemia or something." And then I turned off the phone and I turned on the TV. Oh my, Animal Planet. Man, what a channel. I hadn't watched it since I was a kid, but that night I just couldn't get enough of it. Did you know that the San Diego Zoo is the only place in the Americas where you can see a real life platypus? Oh my. Something about that pissed me totally off. It pissed the hell of me off. In my drunken mind, I believe that every goddamn American household should have a platypus within walking distance of their home. I know, I'm crazy. Are we all of a sudden not a global superpower? Why is this not talked about in election years? Oh my. That night, drunk off my tits, I was going to write a letter, fueled by self-righteous rage and Kentucky Brown. I pulled out my laptop and I started crafting one of the most incoherent, high-energy, and epistolary works in the English language, and I plan to aim it directly at the heart of the US National Park Service. Looking back, that probably wasn't even the correct place to send it to. And on top of that, some interns would likely just mail me back some buffalo shit from an anonymous post office box. But that night, I was on fire. That is, until I saw the man standing on my fire escape. Being hammered and totally blacked out drunk, I saw him standing on my fire escape. But he was actually floating just outside of it. I realized the last part of when I watched him float up, feet passing over the railing and floating back down just outside of my window. His skin was grey. It wasn't really a pasty, sickly grey you see in the hospital, but the dark, ashy grey of someone being long dead. A cadaveric tone of grey. A cadaveric shade of grey. His waxy, lifeless skin stretched tight over the sharp, high cheekbones of a smooth bald head, and his eyes burned large and yellow, deep set in a misshapen skull. The window between us opened noiselessly, without either of us reaching out to touch it. Go away! Go away! I slurred, not realizing the danger I was in. When I spoke to it, it leaped through the open window and it was a few feet away from me in what seemed less than an instant. Too drawn to react, I tried to stand. I stumbled and I fell back onto the couch. That thing moved closer. Its hands shot to my face and pried my eyes open with its two long, bony fingers. And then, uncut and dirty fingernails gashed into my cheeks as it lowered its eyes to meet mine. That thing stared deep into my eyes and I tried to scream, only to find I couldn't. I couldn't stand, I couldn't lift my arms, and I couldn't turn my head. All I could do was stare back into the evil, unnatural eyes of the intruder. Once the intruder noticed my helplessness, it released my head and it sat down on the couch right next to me. My head lolled back onto the couch, heavy like a newborn baby. I tried again to scream, but I couldn't even move my tongue. I was paralyzed. All I could move was my eyes, so I sat and watched falling tears cut rivers down my face. I remember thinking, this is what the gazelles on Animal Planet feel like. The monster sitting next to me looked excited, giddy even. He bounced on the couch a few times, testing its comfort. It rubbed his hands together and then reached down to the door. It grabbed my leg and pulled it up onto his lap. I watched in terror as it rolled back my pant leg and it pulled off my sock and it began inspecting the wound on my ankle. Its long fingernails prodded around the scab for a few moments before it found purchase under the scab and peeled it off, setting loose a fresh torrent of blood from the puncture mark. The monster next to me started shaking with glee, its breathing becoming shallow and rapid. From the corner of my eye, I watched as the creature's tongue unfolded out of its mouth like these paper blows that they give out at kids' parties. The tongue extended about 2 feet from the creature's face, and it ended in a sharp proboscis like a giant mosquito. The tip was about the circumference of a number 2 pencil. I didn't watch when it stuck its long tube-like appendage into my ankle. I also didn't feel it when it did. I just closed my eyes and I felt myself growing weaker and weaker by the second. I had my eyes closed for what was probably a few minutes, but what felt like hours. My body was completely numb and incredibly weak, and I was still paralyzed. I didn't want to look. I wanted to keep my eyes closed and tell myself this was all a dream. I would wake up in the morning, finish my letter, and I would move on and go on with my life. This was nothing but a bad dream to explain away my bloody shits from that morning. Then I felt a cool hand on my shoulder, shaking me away, so I opened my eyes. The thing was again standing in front of me, its cat eyes inches away from my own, its cold hand gently resting on my shoulder. I got the feeling its hand was on my shoulder more for its own balance than anything else. I got the feeling Its hand was on my shoulder, more for its own balance than anything else. The thing released its grip on my shoulder, and it took a few wobbly steps backwards. It built momentum, and it began to fall backwards, and it reached its arms out to steady itself from on my living room wall. Its left hand dragged across the wall, looking for a place to grab onto, and the first thing it found was my little crucifix. Fuck! Steam jumped from the creature's hand, and it screamed, "Fuck!" And then it crashed backwards onto its ass on the floor of my living room. It sat on the floor for a while, drunk as hell, laughing to itself as it tried for a full minute to get back onto its feet. Once, and finally, it was bipedal again. It stood tall and menacingly as it could, as if I wouldn't remember how stupid it just looked. Then, it pointed to the coffee table and he said, "For tomorrow, for tomorrow." I looked over to the coffee table and I saw a brand new unopened bottle of whiskey. When I looked back, the monster was gone. When I looked back to the monster, it was gone. The next morning, I realized the picture I sent to my boss included a bottle of whiskey in my hand. I was fired, so I drank the whiskey that the thing left for me. Yes, you can call me an idiot. In fact, call me an idiot. Sure, but what was I going to do? Call the police on a fucking vampire? He came again and again, and I never found the Shrek cutout. In fact, I missed my niece's entire birthday party altogether. I didn't even call her. I lost my apartment next because I couldn't find a job. I live on the street now. I have a tent, a shopping cart, and a few blankets. Also, I have a library card, and that's how I'm posting this now. You might think I have a problem, but I don't need help. I'm pretty happy, you know. I sleep under the stars most nights, and there is a fresh bottle of whiskey in my shopping cart every morning. I can stop whenever I want, but I'm keeping this thing from hurting other people, right? It's best not to get other people involved. I can stop whenever I want. My ankles are pretty torn up, so he stopped taking from there a while ago. My back is all scabs now, and it can be hard to stop the bleeding. But, I can stop whenever I want. But if you had my problems, you would probably drink too. Thanks for listening.